Hi, everyone. Welcome to Module 8. Again, we're more than halfway through the course, and I want to thank everybody for doing such a great job thus far. So this week, we're looking at the differences between criminalistics and forensic science, and then understanding the investigative stages. So for your assignment is the second part of it. So the difference between criminalistics and forensic science, in a nutshell, is criminalistics is the actual application of forensic science. So forensic science, as you might have already had the opportunity to explore in SCI 130 or SCI 230 Advanced Forensic Science, is how the process that say DNA is processed in the lab, or how ballistics is how they might use a ballistics chamber, the water chamber, to collect a fired round, and then compare it under or put it under the comparison microscope and look for the striaca on the bullet fragment. So keep in mind that the very narrow, I want you to explore this, so I'm not going to give you the deep meaning behind it, but the very narrow differences between forensic science is the actual forensic science is the lab side of it. It's the science side of it. And criminalistics is the collection and processing of crime scene samples. So for the homework assignment this week, we are looking at the investigative stages. And the first stage is immediate action. What do the first responders do? Well, of course, they're looking at a crime, but they need to make sure that it's safe. They need to make sure that anybody that needs first aid or emergency services, that they get it. The second part of that is to make sure that the criminal offender is still not present and that they're containing the area and making it safe for everybody that might be arriving. The second stage is planning the investigation. Now, we need to understand whether is it an indoor scene, an outdoor scene, or a conveyance scene. Essentially, a conveyance scene is an indoor or outdoor or indoor and outdoor type of crime scene, meaning that the crime scene may have began at one location, but might have ended at another location. The body may have been moved, whatever the reason. The next thing is the data collection and sample collection. So if this was say a school shooting, you want to be able to identify how many rounds were fired, the location of those rounds, the angle that the rounds were fired from, possibly the weapon that was used, the type of round, the type of round might be able to tell you that. There's a variety of things that you're collecting. You're looking for soil samples, hair samples, DNA samples, which hair samples falls into, fiber samples, maybe broken glass was involved, maybe tire marks are involved. There's a variety of different things that you're looking for. If this was more of an electronic evidence collection, you might be looking at question document examination, which is a broad area of microstamping and forgeries, a variety of different information. And then once you've got all that collection, then it's the data analysis phase. That means that you've taken all of those samples, the criminalistic side is handed off to the forensic side, and then at the data analysis stage, the lab is testing DNA or hair samples or comparing tire impressions or foot mark impressions. They're doing all of this stuff to narrow down the field of who committed the crime and who didn't commit the crime. So one thing that you should keep in mind is that there's a thing called the Lockhart exchange principle. And essentially what that is that every time we walk into a room, we bring a little bit of evidence into the room that we were there. And every time we leave the room, we bring a little evidence that we were in that room. So the Lockhart exchange principle is that you always are bringing in and taking away evidence of your being someplace. So the evidence collection isn't always about finding out who committed the crime. It also is about eliminating who you might have thought did the crime. The next phase is the correlation action or collective action. And that's really focusing in on the root causes or the root evidence of who committed the crime. Far often than not, we're human. We get that tunnel vision. We think that after interviewing a suspect, it didn't interview that well, or it might have interviewed really well, and our spidey senses are going off, and we target in on that suspect who may not be the suspect. And all of the evidence shows us it's not the suspect. And we tend to try to, or investigators might try to get the evidence to fit that suspect. Stephen Avery's original case is a perfect example. If you've ever seen Making a Murderer on Netflix, that original case is that they found evidence to make it look like Stephen Avery there, because they truly believed he was guilty, when in fact he wasn't. And then the final stage is the reporting out. So you've returned back returned back to the root causes, and you've identified who the suspect is or a range of suspects. And then you bring in correlating evidence and witness testimonies, all of that other stuff. But the actual forensics then writes a report up and say, based upon this DNA, this subject samples, this is what we believe, and this is why. Here's the match. Here's the science behind it. So those are your stages. Now, clearly, I expect that you're going to look into this a little bit more deeply than what I've explained in a 6-minute video or overview video. But if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Again, you can always reach me by text, telephone, or Zoom, or by email. And I hope you enjoy this week.